Hey, I'm Marie.
And I'm Nicolina.
And we're the hosts of Paranormal Podcast. If you want to feel like you're at a slumber party with your best friends telling everyone creepy stories, listen and subscribe to us at Apple Podcasts and on Spotify.
That's paranormal. The normal is in brackets.
Stay spooky.
Directly to the killer who may be in this room. We believe you are hiding in plain sight. We likely have interviewed you or someone close to you. We know that this is about power to you, and you want to know what we know. And one day, you will.
Oh, hello, everyone. You're listening to Creep It Real. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Bianca.
Thanks for listening
To Creep It Real.
Okay, hey, everybody. Welcome back.
We are already working on our next totems of affection for y'all. And
For patrons.
For patrons.
Yes.
And the pins are on their way as well.
They're on their way to us.
Yeah, they are on their way to us. We didn't realize that they were going to be delivered from as far away as they are being delivered.
That's okay.
But they're coming.
It's all right. And then after that, after our beloved family, close family members get them, they're going to be available on our website.
Yes.
So I'm going to put them all over my backpack.
I know.
I'm going to put 7 of them on my back.
Yeah.
It's going to be my Friday's bling.
Your Fridays bling?
You know, like how at Fridays, if you work at Fridays, you have
like your swag or whatever. What do they call it?
Swag. This is my. Wait, what is that song by, Soulja Boy?
Yes. This right here is my swag.
I was just saying that the other day. That is so crazy. And I'm not into Soulja Boy, so Soulja Boy tell him. So that's just one of those weird synchronicities that happen.
That is. Mm-hmm. The other thing is we did receive some requests for things like hoodies and mugs and stuff.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And we are going to get that. We are going to get on that for you guys.
Considering I haven't taken a hoodie off all summer.
Yeah, it's a weird situation.
So yeah, I need a hoodie.
She needs a hoodie in 90-degree weather.
Yeah.
We also had a fun little family reunion with all of our $5 and up patrons last night. And we are hoping to do that more and more.
For sure.
It was just a lot of fun.
It
we
really
had a ton
was.
of fun, yeah.
And I'll be honest, I was a little like, oh no, is it going to, I'm not a fan of talking on the phone.
Right.
To anyone.
Right.
No matter who it is.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
No, it was like so much fun.
And even after we were done, I was like, I turned over to Ash and I was like, that was fun. That was really fun. That was like a lot of fun.
It was like hanging out with your friends. I honestly felt like, how awesome is it that we have people who, listen to the show, they want to support us, and we got to know them in a way. They live all over the place.
All over. Not one of them lived in the same place.
No, and we got to know them.
One was in Washington, one was in Arizona. Like,
it was pretty awesome.
It was
just
a lot
to think
of fun.
that we can get to hang out with people when we're not really there.
Yeah.
So it really was just like that. So we're thinking, we have so many plans, but one of them is watching some movies together, and that's a perfect way to do it. It really is. So anyway, we're so excited to be just spending more time with our patrons and truly getting to become the family that we are.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we wanted to do is, obviously, once we hit 50 patrons, we'd like to start recording a visual of our recording, blunders and all. We had a lot of fun doing it when we first did the live stream on Instagram for the Watcher, even though we had all the technical difficulties in the world.
Yeah, but now I think we're going to be a little bit better.
Now that we have like an idea. And we didn't mention it on the last episode, but we were on our friend and author's Leslie Fear's show, Because I Want to Know, which we included her promo on last week. And we talked about our love of true crime and the cases that intrigue us the most.
I think it's a good way to get to know us a little bit more personally. If you're not a patron, then you don't get the access to those creeping up episodes where we're just kind of hanging out.
Yeah. And so with all of that out of the way, Today we are bringing to you another very much requested case, and one that is also quite recent. The murders of 13-year-old Abigail Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German, also known as the Delphi murders, and to a lesser extent, the Snapchat murders. Entire podcasts have been dedicated to this case, and as always, we will try our very best to bring to you all of the information regarding the case and the timeline that we can.
And if you're interested in our sources for the episode, you can check out our show notes on whatever podcast platform you listen to. They will all be listed in their thousands. There's going to be 1,000 pages, but go look it up if you need to figure out where we got some of our information. On February 13th, 2017, Libby German, 14, and Abigail Williams, 13, were hiking on the Delphi Historic Trail near the Monon High Bridge, just east of Delphi in Carroll County, Indiana. Libby and Abigail were reported missing to police after their parents were unable to locate them at the pickup location. Volunteers subsequently discovered the girls' bodies in the woods east of Delphi in Carroll County, Indiana, on February 14th, 2017. Libby German was a 14-year-old middle school student in Delphi, Indiana, who enjoyed painting, crafts, volleyball, softball, soccer, and swimming, according to her obituary. She was a member of the band and the Academic Bowl. Abigail Williams was described as an avid lover of the outdoors who played volleyball, saxophone in the school band, and was involved in several churches in the area.
So both Abby and Libby were 8th graders at Delphi Community Middle School. They were in band together, and they both played alto sax with one another, and they were both on the volleyball team. And in general, they just shared a special friendship with one another, culminating from their passions in a lot of the same interests. They're both very outdoorsy, into music, into academics. Libby had a love of science, and like all of us, she was also interested in solving crimes. She even attended several classes at Purdue at her young age. Libby's mom, Carrie, was living in Kentucky, so she seemed to have given custody for Libby to her ex, Derek, and his parents, Becky and Mike. And Abby's mom, Anna, had Abby when she was 19, and she was a single mom. The week before the murders was approximately February 6th of 2017, and according to Libby German's legal guardian, her grandmother, Libby's phone had been glitching that week. And Libby performed a factory reset on it, wiping all of her data from it and neglecting to reinstall the Find My Phone app, which will become kind of one of the main points of this story towards the end here.
Yeah. On Sunday, February 12th, Abby and Libby went to practice softball at the park, and they were taken by Anna, Abby's mom. Later that night, Abby slept over at Libby's house, where the two worked on a school project about chocolate. They later watched movies and ate pizza, and around 2:45 a.m., they made multiple videos of themselves, and I'm assuming that meant that they posted them to Snapchat, because I'm such an old grandmother. I'm calling it Snap, but you know what I meant.
Abby had slept over at Libby's house because they had an unused snow day the previous Friday and the next day, Monday.
That is amazing.
Well, I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
So for our California, Florida, Arizona, snow day states.
We actually had them though because it was
ice. You did?
Yeah, ice days.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See, and I even included Texas there, but then I was like, maybe not.
It was, it's weird, and I know that, but we do have a lot of Texas listeners, so, honestly, that's what we always talked about was you either have ice days or you've got 100 degrees. You don't really have like an in-between.
Yeah.
But very rarely does it snow. It's more just ice. But anyway.
So I had to actually ask somebody from the Midwest for some additional information about what this means. And every year, for those who don't know, they guess how many snow days they're going to need for the year. And if they underestimate it, students get some random day off, of course. And if they go over, they have to stay in school a little bit longer in the summer.
So on Monday the 13th, just like the Friday prior, they didn't go to school. According to Libby's mom, Carrie, she sent Libby a Snapchat message saying, "Good morning, beautiful. Have a good day." And Libby sent her back a picture of her in bed. Her mom asked her what she was doing in bed, and she responded that she didn't have school that day. It was the last conversation that Carrie would ever have with her daughter. She says, "Honestly, that's the moment my life changed. It hasn't been the same since. It was the most devastating news up until that point that I had ever received, that she was missing. I didn't know until the next day that it could get even worse." At 10 a.m., Mike Patty thinks he woke up the girls, and afterward, they said that they were bored and asked Becky if there was something that they could do. She told them that if they helped her with their chores around the house, like filing and painting a desk, that they could go shopping later. So they did those chores. Libby then grew restless and wanted to get out of the house. The girls asked if they could go for a hike at the Monon High Bridge, and because they had gone many times before on bike rides, hiking, and to take pictures, they also geocached there, and they gave the girls the go-ahead to go out. It was a completely spontaneous outing, which I want to mention because that definitely comes into play with, theories and speculation that come later. Abby's mom said that she would have given her daughter permission to go on the hike, but she never asked her if she could go. At 1:26 p.m. that day, a 16-year-old female with a group of friends near the Freedom Bridge on that same trail system is getting ready to leave, and she takes a picture on her phone and sends it to her mother 1 minute later. This would later serve as a timestamp that would help the 16-year-old witness remember when she saw who would be later the suspect in the murder of the two girls, who was widely referred to as Bridge Guy or BG online. We'll probably refer to him as a piece of shit, basically. We'll probably call him a few different things, but you'll know who we're talking about. She says this 16-year-old female, she said that at 1:30, she was near some benches by the bridge on that Freedom Bridge when she noticed this man and said hello to him. She said that he gave her a look that scared her, which I feel like, man, if someone just looking at you gives you a look like they scare you.
Always trust that gut instinct.
Oh my gosh, yes. She said they passed each other on a narrow trail. He was only a few feet away, and that he was her height, maybe an inch or so taller, which would make him around 5'6", 5'8". When she later heard that Abby and Libby had gone missing, she immediately thought of this man, and she called it into police, which I also was just, that struck me as very significant, that somebody was there. He didn't do anything.
But give her a look that frightened her, and she was like, I don't know.
The man. Like, the minute she thought of it, or she heard about the story. She described him as wearing blue jeans, a blue coat, and a hoodie pulled up over a short-billed hat, along with covering the lower half of his face with like a scarf or something of that nature. She is one of the two witnesses whose descriptions of the man were used to create the now widely circulated sketch of the man in the newsboy cap, which we will discuss as like the first sketch in this episode. Police wouldn't release the sketch until July of 2017. It was around 1:30 when Abby and Libby are allowed to go to the bridge as long as they could get a ride there and back. So they find Kelsey, Libby's sister, and she agrees to give them a ride on her way to her friend's house before she goes to work.
So we'll talk about a little deviance from the timeline in just a moment, because there are conflicting reports from Derek and Kelsey, but it makes sense because you don't typically look at the time and think, I need to remember this time. This is going to be a very significant time in my life.
Right.
It's 1:32 and I'm dropping my sister off to go hiking. You know, it's not.
You're just not thinking
that's not something that you're thinking about. Yeah,
my
exactly.
sister's about to go missing and I'm never going to see her again.
Exactly.
So I need to remember every single detail. But yeah, there's definitely, throughout the story, there's always going to be, I think, conflicting reports about just different little aspects like time.
For sure.
So as Kelsey drove the girls to the bridge, she received a call from her boyfriend, which is what makes her believe that she dropped the girls off at the bridge around 1:38 to 1:39 p.m. She said that she dropped the girls off at the main entrance to the Mary Gerard Nature Preserve somewhere between that time. But according to Derek, Libby's dad again, he says that Libby called at 1:38 to ask if he could pick them up at the parking lot around 3 p.m., just as the girls were pulling out of the driveway of Abby's house. So he thinks that they were probably dropped off closer to 1:45 p.m. Either way about it, it's about a 6-minute discrepancy. But, you know, at the same time, that's something I'm going to mention a lot in this episode is that this case, this was a very slim window of opportunity for this murderer to have done this. And it's crazy to me but that happens in so many cases that we discuss. It's just this very narrow amount of time where somebody has the opportunity to take advantage of someone. And it is just unbelievable to me that this happens, but it happens, obviously, unfortunately. He told the girls that he would call when he was close so that Abby and Libby could be in the Mears parking lot when he got there to pick them up. Somewhere between 1:45 and 2:07, Libby posted 2 photos on Snapchat. One was of Abby on this bridge, and another was of just the bridge itself.
According to an NBC article written in August of 2017, more audio from Libby German's cell phone was played for the victim's family that included mention of a man they had noticed behind them.
Ugh.
They talked mostly about girl stuff, but also mentioned the man, and the only audio that has been released to the public is that of the man's voice ordering them down the hill. It was this video that investigators now believe was taken between 2:15 and 2:30, which Libby took with her cell phone, of the man who is now believed to be the girl's killer walking towards them. Those familiar with the area have estimated this was somewhere between the southeast end of the bridge.
And that's super eerie to me. Like, that gave me heebie-jeebies just thinking about it.
I mean, Libby was super into true crime and she felt unsafe. And I think it took a lot of foresight for her to be like, you know what? This might be a dangerous situation. This guy is creeping me out. And I don't know, for a 14-year-old to have that kind of...
To have thought about, I need to record this guy. Yeah. Well, and maybe that's something that...
And the audio?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, it's something that I think maybe that comes with being a younger person in today's times. Maybe, like, you think about that stuff more. Like, I can catch this on video. I should do that right now.
Right.
So at around 2:30, there was the audio recording that was later released by law enforcement of this man saying, "Guys, down the hill." Though initially they only released the down the hill part, and then a year later they released the guys portion. We're not even really certain if they go together or not, but it is what they're releasing. I'm not sure. And again, we have no idea why they're not releasing the full audio. Obviously, they believe that it is going to help them in case we are able to find whoever did this, to be able to prosecute in a trial and have information that maybe that hasn't been released to the public.
Well, I think that Sheriff Toby Lesenby.
Yeah, Lesenby.
He was talking about how when he heard the full audio, which I think we're going to talk about in a second, he had a moment where he was like, "Wait, I know that voice."
Oh, I heard that. I read that.
But I don't know if that's just something from coming from a town of 3,000 people where you know everybody.
Yeah.
Or if that's like knowing, hey, wait, or if maybe he's a part of law enforcement. Would we be surprised at this point? No.
You can't cross anything out.
Exactly.
You can't. And especially in this case, whenever, just like, which we'll reference the Golden State Killer a couple times probably during this case, but obviously, part of the reason he was able to get away with what he did for so long was because he was a law enforcement officer.
Right.
So who knows? But whenever something like this can go unnoticed, or not unnoticed, it's obviously gone unnoticed, but to go unsolved for so long, you have to start to think, why is that able to happen?
Right.
You know, but we'll talk about it more. So the girls and the man then cross over from the south side of Deer Creek, known as Sanders property, to the north side, which is known as Logan property. There is a home on Sanders property, but the woman who lived there was not home at the time the girls were taken across the river with the scumbag. Sometime between 2:30 and 2:45, the girls were murdered. And around 2:45 to 2:50, a woman named Cheyenne Makesha Ingalls says that she parked in the Mears lot, the same where Abby and Libby had been dropped off about an hour earlier, and she entered the trails. She walked across the bridge from north to south and took a picture at the south end sometime between 2:50 and 3 o'clock, and then she took another at 3 o'clock on the dot. She didn't capture anything unusual in her photos, and she says she didn't hear or see anything at that time. She later posted to Jamie Kelly's Facebook that she walked all the way across the bridge and back and only saw a guy when she first got there, and then a couple guys once she was on the bridge, but that she didn't see the girls at all. She said that she didn't take any trail other than the one that led to the bridge. She also said that she saw a woman who she knew there at the bridge, and that there was an arguing couple there as well, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit. And she said she knew that couple as well. So it's very likely that the killer had already murdered the girls at that point and had left by the time that Cheyenne was on the trails, which is, like I said, a very
short window of opportunity.
Holy moly. There's so much about this case that just truly boggles my mind.
For sure.
I mean, it's unreal. So it's also around this time, around 3 p.m., that a 20-something male witness and his girlfriend pulled into the Mears parking lot. They got out of their car and they took a leisurely walk along the 501 trail toward the High Bridge. This is the couple who is referred to in reports as the arguing couple that Cheyenne mentioned in her statement to police. So it's about 3:10 to 3:15 that the killer or bridge guy passes this guy and his girlfriend, the arguing couple, as they head west, as he heads west towards the Freedom Bridge. The male witness would later say that this man did not have his hood up and his hat was exposed. His girlfriend didn't even notice him at all because they were in the middle of an argument, which I can understand as well. For sure.
Yeah.
I so much wish that we could all just be able to, notice every single detail of everything around us whenever we're distracted. But how much do we go around where I wouldn't even have been able to tell you anything? Oh, terrible. But it's a lesson to all of us that, man, if only we did take a little bit more notice about our surroundings, sometimes it might be able to help.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, everybody should be more aware of their surroundings, myself included, us included.
Yeah. It was days later when this witness saw the photo from Libby's phone that was released a few days after the murders, which we'll get into, but he immediately called police and said, "That's the man that I saw." So again, this is somebody who, before police reports that released any photos or any depiction of the person that they suspected in these murders, he was like, "That's it. That's the guy." And then there's a 20-year-old, it's this 20-year-old male and the 16-year-old female witness that are sources for the Newsboy Cap sketch that we have seen as like the first sketch of the suspect. Though neither of them were very pleased with that sketch itself, so that tells me that maybe it's a good thing that they redid it, which we'll talk about. But both of these witnesses said that the cap that the man was wearing was not a newsboy cap, which is kind of what was depicted in that first sketch of the suspect. Instead, they say that it was more like a painter's cap, as the male had described, and the girl had just said it was short-brimmed, but not a newsboy cap.
So, I looked at the pic. Obviously, we've all looked at the picture, or you and I looked at the picture, at least.
Yes.
And to me, it kind of looked like one of those Russian ear flap hats, like the Elmer Fudd, type hat.
Yeah. It definitely could be.
It's called an Ushanka, or Ushanka.
It's so hard to tell,
Yeah, it's so hard because it's such a blurry photo that they had to actually zoom in on the photo, and that's what makes it so distorted. So yeah,
it's really hard.
It's really difficult.
Both of those people also said that the guy had a scarf that was covering the lower part of his face, and that they were both with people that didn't notice this guy. The main difference between the two witnesses' descriptions is that the female said that he was wearing a hoodie over his hat, and the male said that he was just wearing a hat. But obviously a hoodie is pretty easily removable, could have been knocked down in a scuffle, there's any little thing. But also, it's funny because in that video that they finally released 2 years later, I was like, wait a second, is he wearing something over his face?
Right.
And then the next second, it's like, clearly, no, he's not. Right. But then, there's a second where it looks like maybe there is something over his face. So, that video I just think is so blurry, it's hard for us to really be able to tell anything.
Additionally, they both said that if they had to pick him out of a lineup, they probably couldn't, of course, because his face was covered with a scarf. So, but they're both saying that it was covered with the scarf. So
yeah, which, I mean, well, and he could have been walking around with a scarf on his face and then left without a scarf on his face because he was hot or something. Right. Who knows where it got knocked down? I mean, we just don't know. It's so much that we just don't know.
Don't know. God. So frustrating.
It is very frustrating. I can only imagine what it's like to be part of the family or people that actually were connected to the case. At 3:11, Derek German leaves a message on Libby's phone, which went straight to voicemail, that he was almost there. He left this message as he crossed the Wilson's Bridge. It's about this same time that the 20-year-old male witness and his girlfriend passed the man that they believe is the suspect in this murder as he heads towards the Freedom Bridge. So just, gosh, it's like, damn it, it's so close.
I know, it's so close.
It's kind of like with Kanika Jenkins and how her mom went to the hotel whenever she was probably just entering the freezer. And then it's like, just like it's like that, it's right there, but it's so hard, you can't do anything about it.
Right.
At 3:13, Derek arrived at the Mary Gerard entrance in the Mears parking lot. He called Libby again and then sent her a text. After waiting a couple minutes, he headed out onto the trails to find the girls, and about 5 minutes later, he ran into a man a man named Dave McCain, who was sometimes referred to in the case as Flannel Shirt Guy. McCain was coming from the bridge, walking west on the 501 trail, and said that he had not seen the girls. He said that there was a couple down by the bridge, but no girls. And because of this, around 3:20, Derek walks the 505 trail, one that doesn't lead to the bridge, and instead goes down to the Mary I. Gerard Reserve, which Deer Creek runs along.
Which is really frustrating because
yes,
this is, I mean, eventually they find that this is where the girls' bodies are found.
Yes.
And it's like, you're almost there, and then something happens, and then he just turns around and he's like, I don't know, but Is murder really the first? I don't know if murder is even the first thought that crosses a parent's mind.
I mean, I guess it's the last thing that you want to think about, I'm sure. And then, this has also led to speculation that this flannel shirt guy, Dave McCain, is a suspect. He was misleading him, but I think it's just a matter of he didn't see him because that's not where they were, you know? And then, but anyway, at the moment, but it's also, we have no idea if, especially considering that we really have no information about the crime scene itself. We don't really know if he would have found them, if it would have made any difference at that time.
Right.
Really, we just don't know anything, unfortunately. So Derek called Libby once again as he walked the trail. It was sometime around 3:24, and then he called again at 3:32, but there still was no answer. And that is when I'm sure the panic begins to set in, and you're like thinking initially that this may not be that big a deal. They got distracted by something, and then you're starting to think, oh my God, what has happened? Yes. So a few minutes later at 3:33, Derek called his mother, Becky, to see if Libby and Abby were already home, and he told her that Libby wasn't answering her phone. A minute later, he called his sister, Tara, who he had to leave a message, and he asked if she'd heard from the girls in his voicemail. At approximately 3:35, he walked to the Freedom Bridge, and as he walked, he passed Dave McCain again. He called Libby again at 3:57, then at 3:58, he called his mother again, who then called Kelsey, Libby's sister, who dropped them off at the bridge, who is at her boyfriend's house, and she asks her if she's heard from Libby, which she hasn't. She then calls Libby again and then begins calling the girls' friends to see if they've heard from them, but no one had. At this point, Becky called her daughter Tara, and they decide to go to the trails to look for the girls. Around 4:20, Becky called her husband Mike to let him know that the girls were missing and that they were going to go out to look for them at the trails. He was in Lafayette, which was about 30 minutes away, and he told her he was going to leave ASAP to join them in the search for the girls. About 1 minute later, Becky's son, Libby's uncle, Cody, got home, and the two discussed taking separate routes to the trails in case the girls were walking home on one of them, but unfortunately they were not. By 4:30, Kelsey, Becky, Cody, Tara, and Derek had all arrived to the trails and were on their way to search for the girls. Becky had started to walk and look for the girls and called AT&T, who couldn't help them locate the phone because Libby had taken off the Find My iPhone app whenever she had wiped her phone of whatever was causing that glitch, like Bianca had mentioned earlier, unfortunately. And, how many times have you gotten a new phone and you don't load you can't remember all the apps that you had on it before or whatever, and you don't think it's going to be,
you just think that your phone is going to get stolen. Yeah. You're like, that's the main concern, is that your phone is going to get stolen, you're going to go missing.
And that somebody is going to need to use that to locate you. Cody and Kelsey crossed the high bridge while yelling for Abby and Libby and started down the hill at the south end. Kelsey saw what she described as disrupted ground, like someone had recently slipped down the hill at that spot. Then the pair knocked on the doors of the homes that were there at the south end of the bridge, and only one person was home, so they walked back across the bridge into the parking lot. It was around this time that Becky tried to call Abby's mom on her cell phone, and when she couldn't reach her, she drove to her house, where she was told that Abby's mom, Anna, was at work, where she waited tables. So then Anna called her back sometime around 4:35, and she left her work, headed to the sheriff's department, and also called a friend and asked him to check the city park for the girls, but she went immediately to the sheriff's department to file a missing persons report.
Good.
At 5 o'clock, Mike Patty arrived and parked across the street in the Mears driveway. He continued to call Libby's phone repeatedly, and it began to go straight to voicemail time after time. At this point, a Mr. John Mears joined the search, and it's that man who owns the property that they were parking at. Around 20 minutes later, Mike Patty reported the girls missing to the local police. After 2 separate missing persons reports were filed for Abby and Libby, due to the fact that law enforcement did not have reason to believe it was an abduction or that the girls were in imminent danger, the situation did not meet the criteria for an Amber Alert, so one was never issued for the girls. They've now said it wouldn't have mattered, but I wonder if it would have mattered.
I don't know that it would have mattered, but I was reading the criteria for an Amber Alert, and I was like, no, this kind of fits all of the criteria for an Amber Alert.
It's very strange to me that you think a missing 13 and 14-year-old girls
doesn't meet the criteria. Yeah. Like, are we...
It doesn't make a lot of sense, but, you know, we'll talk a little bit about just the why in the world that was deemed the case in a little bit. Allegedly, the first officer that arrived on the scene was around 5:25, and then at 5:50 to 6 o'clock, the Delphi fire tones were struck. Secondary calls went out to the volunteer department, who responded in fire department vehicles as well as their own personal vehicles. And then at 6 o'clock, a search effort involving law enforcement and volunteers, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, Delphi Police Department, Delphi Fire Department, and the Department of Natural Resources began. It was at some point that evening that a woman said she was driving home to Delphi from Frankfurt when she saw a driver whose car had broken down. She said that he wouldn't make eye contact and told her that his dad was coming to pick him up. Now, this could be 100% irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, it totally could be. I mean, was it the same one that they were talking about in front of the CPS building?
I think it's possible, but they haven't released what kind of car it actually was. Of course. And so I'm thinking that it's possible because this information was released to the public. Maybe it did have significance to the case, and maybe it did match that car. But we don't really know. There's nothing to really confirm it, but right now, I feel like the fact that he wouldn't make eye contact is like the most damning
for sure
thing. But at the same time, you also have to acknowledge that there's a large population of people who can't make eye contact with people, and not because of they're a murderer, but because they just aren't comfortable doing so with people that they're not comfortable doing it with. So, you know, it's you never know. But anyway, sometime in the 7 o'clock hour, the commander began to discuss ending the search for the night and starting back up again at daylight. Carroll County Sheriff Toby Lesenby said that they attempted to ping the girls' cell phones, but were unable to due to the fact that they were either dead or turned off intentionally.
At 11:45, he calls off the search, believing that Abby and Libby might be with friends. I don't know why he thought they might be with friends when they called their friends and everybody was like, I haven't seen her or them.
It's truly mind-boggling. And I kind of fell into a hole of trying to figure out what the hell was going on with that situation.
Right.
And it may just be either small town sheriff or inexperience or
cover up. Like, it's so many things that it could be. Lesenby said there was no reason to believe the girls were in imminent danger, and the biggest challenge facing the girls was exposure to the elements.
And but that itself was like
danger. Exactly. Like, and they weren't particularly wearing heavy coats when they went out because it was a warm day for the winter. It was like 40 degrees in the daytime.
Yeah, exactly. But it was February, so it was going to get cold. And it just because it's not negative 30 doesn't mean that 2 girls out in the elements couldn't die from the elements.
Exactly.
You know, it's a very strange reaction to the situation.
And like I said earlier, when the audio was released, he said he knew the voice on the audio, but he just couldn't seem to put a name with the voice. I was reading a lot of testimony and a lot of things from people who do live in Delphi, and a lot of them do say the same thing.
That's such a weird thing to say.
That they know the voice, but they can't like quite put their finger on it. Like, it's off the tip of their tongue, but they're like, I don't know where I've heard this voice before. I mean, radio personality, maybe? that
seems not possible. You would just be an idiot.
I don't know, you know? And obviously he has heard what the general public hasn't been privy to. So maybe it's that made him say that, or maybe it is a genuine familiarity with the voice. Delphi has 3,000 people in it. So maybe he had met the individual since it is a small town.
Yeah.
But obviously that's just speculation. I don't know.
Truly mind-boggling to me that he made this assumption. Did you really look into that. What in the world would have made you think 2 missing girls who their parents say are missing? They've called their friends. They can't find them. The parents have all said, all the family members have said that this is not typical behavior. Mm-hmm. I just don't understand how they have the information that makes them think everything's fine. Mm-hmm. They obviously didn't have that information.
Right.
Because what in the world drove you to say that? It seems to me like you would want to be like, well, we did everything we could, instead of being like, we're going to call it. Everything is fine. I'm sure everything's fine. And then the next day you find 2 dead bodies.
Right.
Like, I just don't understand how that is what happened here.
Right.
What is the reason law enforcement came to this conclusion? That it doesn't necessarily mean that there was a nefarious plot put in action by the police, but it doesn't say there isn't either. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't seem like it was the right response here. But we'll discuss that a little bit more, because there is some interesting speculation about just the fact that, not speculation necessarily, but critique, I guess, about his response by other law enforcement officers. Anyway, so the next day, on Tuesday, February 14th, at 8:15 a.m., law enforcement and searchers arrived and began the second day of searches. This time, canine units and dive teams joined in the efforts. According to Libby's sister, Kelsey, as they were searching that morning, someone down by the river found a shoe and called up to Kelsey asking if it was one of the girls. When she found out what type of shoe it was, she yelled back it was Libby's shoe. At that point, another member of the group that had found the shoe spotted 2 deer off in the distance, which he used his phone to zoom in on, and it was at that time that he noticed that there was something below the deer. It was Abby and Libby's bodies. And so, after hours of searching, at around 12 p.m., a volunteer searcher who was rumored to be Abby's 28-year-old uncle, Andrew Erskine, found the bodies of Abby and Libby on the Logan property, which lies on the north side of Deer Creek.
Like I said earlier, this was the initial area that Derek had walked towards when he was looking for the girls, and it was approximately half a mile from where Libby's last Snapchat had been taken. It was part of a 40-acre lot that belonged to a 70-year-old man who was actually eventually ruled out as a suspect. They were like, this can't be him.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it would take... I just don't even... just trying to think about how this could have happened. It's like there's 2 young, strong girls. How do you subdue? How does one single person subdue 2 girls like that and be able to do this in such a short amount of time? That's what I'm just like, my mind truly is just boggled by this. Right. I don't understand.
And that's what leads me to believe it's definitely the bridge guy, because he was probably younger, but these girls seem to be really good girls.
Yeah.
Had a lot of academic programs that they were part of, a lot of extracurricular activities that they were a part of. They probably were like, when he was like ordering them down the hill, they were probably like, okay, is there something that we did wrong? And they probably just followed because they're young girls that probably trust adults at that point.
Somewhat, I'm sure. They were found about a mile east of the Freedom Bridge, which was part of the Hoosier Heartland Highway, about 50 feet from the shore of Deer Creek. Sources reported to WRTV Indianapolis that a set of footprints are what led the volunteers to the area where the bodies were found. At 12:30, a call went out over the radio that the bodies had been found, and law enforcement now says that this is the first time that they had a reason to believe that there had been foul play involved in the girls' disappearance, which, like we said, missing middle school-aged girls might be a reason to suspect foul play, if you ask me.
I mean, or any sane individual.
I mean, following the discovery of the bodies, the search and rescue became evidence recovery, and law enforcement switched gears with the investigation to that of a double homicide. But about just after 1 p.m., autopsies had been scheduled for the following morning in Terre Haute, Indiana, for the 2 bodies that were found during the search. At that point, police did confirm the discovery of 2 bodies, but they did not release the identities of those bodies. And for some reason, around 4 p.m. that day, although autopsies had not been performed, Delphi Community School Superintendent Gregory Briles released a statement that although law enforcement and school officials hadn't made an official announcement, it was his understanding that the bodies discovered were those of Abby and Libby, and said that grief counselors would be at the school for the rest of the week.
What a weird announcement to make.
I know. It seems like he would almost catch flack for that, for doing that before law enforcement. It's weird. It's like, I don't know.
I
have no idea. I mean, maybe he was just thinking that he wanted to get ahead of the rumors with the kids and try to quell some of their fears, but I don't know that it would. The following day by noon, the Carroll County Sheriff's Department and Indiana State Police held a joint press conference where they confirmed that the bodies were those of Libby and Abby.
No other information was given by police regarding how they died, but they did release a photo of the bridge guy to the public. Not initially naming him as a suspect, but just as someone they wanted to interview because he was obviously seen on the trail at the same time as the girls. But,
Yeah, I mean, we now know he's the piece of shit that did it. So in this blurry photo, you can see a white male. His hands are in his pockets. He's wearing jeans, a navy blue jacket. It looks like he has a hat on, but like I said earlier, it's pretty blurry and it's not 100% clear. And to this day, there is still a debate about it. But I will also say that I'll talk about it later, that there's a police officer who's confirmed that there's a hat on this man's head. But also, they can't tell if he's wearing a hoodie. You can't tell if he's wearing a hoodie or not. I mean, like I said, the hoodie can come off or on pretty easily. But we know that there's those 2 witnesses that did say that he was wearing a short-billed cap and that the male said he was wearing a hoodie. I also kind of think that the guy looks like he's wearing clothes that might be baggier than he needs them to be.
I thought the same exact thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you said that because I was like, he looks like a larger man, but then he doesn't. Mm-hmm. He just looks he looks like a baggy man. Mm-hmm. Like maybe he lost weight.
Yeah, or he's just like not filling out his clothes because he's trying to conceal, or he's layering it up because he's trying to conceal his identity. I don't know. I mean,
or he layered it up because it's cold, but not that cold. But, I don't know. It's so much speculative comment.
To me, the fact that there was that first sketch and then the drastically different second one, which we'll talk about, I think that it may be to me, it lends itself to support the fact that perhaps he was trying to conceal his identity a little bit. And that first sketch was more of like based off of the video itself, where it kind of looks like a bigger, not like big, but like a little bit bigger, looks a little bit older. But the people who actually saw him up close realized that he was a little bit thinner, a little bit younger.
And they were also super unhappy with the sketch. And they were like, that doesn't really look like him.
Right. So to me, like, obviously that means if you're going to say that the only 2 witnesses of this man, or at least there might be 3, but the only 2 serious witnesses of this man said, I don't really like the way that sketch looks. Like, but the second one they did not say that about, so we're gonna go off. Obviously, everyone now is going off that one.
Right.
Later that evening, J. Kyle Keener with the Pharos Tribune made a Facebook post describing the stress the community had been under and described the scene as he covered the search the day before for the missing girls and how he could see the girls' clothing in Deer Creek east of the bridge and knew the girls would be nearby. On Thursday, February 16th, police served a search warrant at a Delphi family farm, the Maxwell home, on Bicycle Bridge Road, and then began to question multiple people in conjunction to the murder investigation. A neighbor of the Maxwells saw law enforcement carrying computers out of the family's home, and a reputable source claims that Libby had been messaging Logan Maxwell on social media shortly before her murder. Obviously, this was simply due diligence as far as the investigation was concerned, but ultimately, there were no arrests made from any of these search warrants that were issued. The family scheduled the girls' visitations at the Delphi Community High School gym on Saturday, February 18th, after which the community did a lantern release in their honor. The families held private funerals and burials for the girls the following day.
So even though a few days prior, law enforcement was saying that the person in the photo wasn't a suspect, on February 19th, they officially announced that he was a suspect because he wasn't coming forward and all they wanted to do was talk to him.
Also, you have to wonder, they probably were just trying to lure him.
Right.
Also,
a false sense of security or whatever.
I didn't really think about the fact that because they have her cell phone,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was there at the scene.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think about that. Why would he have left that cell phone there? Okay.
There's like a lot of stuff that's really questionable. That's like,
okay.
anyways, okay. On February 22nd, police and FBI held a press conference to give more details on the case, and they revealed that the photo of the man on the trail that they wanted to interview was taken from Abby's own phone. And they also released that audio clip that had been taken from the phone, the voice of the man saying, "Down the hill."
Guys. Down the hill. Guys. Down the hill. Guys. Down the hill.
Police actually think that Libby made the conscious decision to film the man because she might have had a gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. Although the circumstances regarding why the video was taken remains to this day a mystery.
But I think that's probably pretty right on.
That's probably it. I mean, if she was somebody who wanted to solve crimes, she was interested in being a scientist, she was interested in all the things that we're interested in.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to... I hate thinking about the whole thing, but in the subsequent investigation, unfortunately, there has not been anything incredibly groundbreaking, even with the pieces of evidence that you might think would help considerably in catching this son of a bitch. But there hasn't been. I mean, you think, oh my gosh, there's video of this guy? Mm-hmm. How the fuck has this not been solved yet? You know, it's pretty amazing, but again, it's not the most clear video in the world, and even having a video of someone obviously doesn't just give you a name and an address to go chase them down at.
And the one thing you can like tell from the video is his gait. He's got like a...
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because the police said there's not a gate there, that it's him walking on that broken bridge. So.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I wish that, because I wish the gate was more of an indicator. Yeah.
Shit.
So the FBI has released a description of this man who law enforcement says is the suspect in the girls' murders. He is a white male who is between 5'6" and 5'10", approximately 180 to 200 pounds. He has reddish brown hair, and it's approximately 18 to 40 years old.
That's a 22 year difference?
22-year difference. It's a bit of a
That's a lot.
It's a wide gap there, but he may appear younger than he actually is.
Okay. On April 22nd of 2019, police held a press conference stating the case was going in a new direction, and they released an updated sketch of the suspect, the result of, at that point, 2 years of investigation, and shows a man with a broader age range, that 22-year gap.
That just narrows it down so well for
so
all
much.
of us. Yeah.
The police believe the man lived, worked, or regularly visited Delphi, which again, of course he lived, worked, or visited there. He was there.
Yeah. Yes. And also, that is definitely not a spot that out-of-towners go to, or
That
could they
would be
pull off
exactly.
a murder in an hour?
Exactly. That's like a local spot. Like, you gotta be a local to know that spot. And a longer audio clip of the suspect speaking from Libby's cell phone was also released, but that's only him saying the word guys.
Yeah, which we mentioned earlier. It's literally just guys added to the beginning of Down the Hill.
Yeah.
And they didn't say this is congruent. They just said this is new audio. So it could have just been pieced together because they're speculating that maybe they were talking to each other in between there, or who knows what information is in that other audio. Who knows? There's
speculation that he's saying guys, and then there is that pause in the middle between Down the Hill where he's getting their attention by saying guys and then saying Down the Hill.
Yeah.
Again.
It's possible.
It's possible. We'll play it for you, but it's okay.
It's one of those things where it's like
it's there.
It's something that should help us here.
Right.
It's just like with Amber Tukaro and with Brandon Lawson, where it's like you have this audio and you want to listen to it over and over because you're like, this is going to tell me something, but you're just going to drive yourself crazy because it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't give you anything, but it should give us something.
Right.
But maybe what the police have gives them something.
The only thing about the news sketch was that the description was given by a homeowner in the neighborhood, and there are a lot of discrepancies regarding that if the homeowner was describing a person who was related to the murders. And the other thing is that the person that she saw walking in the neighborhood was near the south end of the bridge, and it wasn't close to the barricades. So I don't know. My opinion is I don't know if the second sketch is credible. But
I hope so, because their entire police investigation is now focused on that second sketch. So I would think that there's probably more that we don't realize that tells them this is the sketch to go off of.
Fair.
So at the press conference, Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter delivered a statement with emotion clearly in his voice. He said, "To the killer who may be in this room, we believe you are hiding in plain sight. In more than 2 years, you never thought we would shift gears to a different investigative strategy, but we have. We know this is about power to you. You want to know what we know, and one day you will."
Well, I mean, maybe that's why they haven't released very much.
Well, yes, I think so,
clearly.
but at the same time, I do think that a lot of this is like tough talk. I hate to say it because I would not necessarily a bluff, but like they want him to be living with this fear, if he is living still.
Right.
They want him to be living with this fear that may trip him up somewhere. And that's great. I hope it does, because, and we'll, I'll say it some more a bit later, but like I always think about these people like this that do something like this and think they're going to get away with it forever. And if people like us continue to talk about this stuff, then hopefully, I mean, obviously we're not the only ones talking about this case, but when people continue to talk about it and continue to push, hopefully these losers are going to talk to somebody. They guaranteed have talked to somebody, but we'll talk about that. So anyway.
In the end, yeah.
So, but I do think that this is definitely some tough talk by law enforcement, considering it's been now over 3 years and nothing has necessarily gone on. But hopefully they don't want to squander their opportunity to convict this person, and they're just waiting for the very, very right moment, hopefully. So in the newly released second sketch, which was created back in February of 2017, it is a much younger man that's depicted in this sketch than in the original. And like you said, it was drawn from an early witness who reported something strange, which law enforcement deemed relevant enough at the time to make the sketch in the first place, but who knows? Who knows? And it was at approximately 12:30 on the day of the girls' murders that there was reported activity in the neighborhood on the south side of Monon High Bridge when a female homeowner saw a younger guy about a quarter mile south of the south end of the bridge. The homeowner said that when she got in her car and approached the guy he left on foot, this homeowner is thought to be the source of the younger guy sketch, which is now the main sketch for the suspect. According to the Indy Star, the sketch was created by Indiana State Police Master Trooper Taylor Bryant based off of a witness description. He is not the person who drew the original sketch back in 2017, but that is now considered a secondary sketch of the suspect. Bryant uses a facial identification reference sheet that has a list of different categories from noses, eyebrows, head shapes, which helps witnesses describe faces better than simply trying to use their own words. He says that the renderings are a, quote, ballpark estimation of what the person looks like and is not an exact depiction. On the podcast Scene of the Crime, their episode A New Direction, the host says that on May 7th, 2019, ISP Kim Riley said during an interview that after reviewing many tips, the suspect likely had a vehicle as he was able to get around quickly on the day the girls were murdered. In an official press release, it is stated that the Indiana State Police say that they are looking for the driver of a vehicle parked at the old CPS DCS welfare building that was abandoned on the east side of CR 300 North next to the Hoosier Heartland Highway between noon and 5 p.m. on February 13th, 2017. Which is obviously the day that the girls were murdered and went missing. Their bodies were discovered the next day, and police have never given a description of this vehicle like we were talking about earlier. But obviously they have now, years later, determined that this car is pertinent in the investigation. And apparently that building was not being used at the time.
Oh no.
So a vehicle being there is awfully suspicious because the building wasn't in use. So I do think that that's very possibly the vehicle that the man used to transport to and from the trails. So the video, but it's just, I guess at the time, you know, how were they to know? The video that was captured on Libby's phone and released that morning showed the only footage of the man that's in motion. And this trooper, Carter, said that he was not walking naturally in the video due to the deterioration of the bridge. He went himself and walked on the bridge and said that it's very rickety, and so you have to kind of like stop around to get around on the bridge, because you're not just going to be able to just like tromp around as usual. He believes that the man may have told someone in the community about the crime. I agree, because people like this just cannot keep their fucking mouth shut. He said, "We have likely interviewed you or someone close to you. A question to you. What will those closest to you think when they find out that you brutally murdered 2 little girls? Only a coward would do such a thing." I would only hope that this man would be able to react to such a statement, but I just don't think he cares.
Probably not.
In January of this year, Carrie Timmons, Liberty's mother, criticized the police investigation for failing to ID a suspect in 3 years. I can understand how that would be your feelings. Who knows? I would be furious.
Yeah.
I would be furious, to be honest.
Sure.
I would be totally furious.
Of course.
In April of this year, on In Pursuit with John Walsh, Walsh covered the murders of Abby and Libby and interviewed Doug Carter about the case. In the interview, Carter stated that the man is in fact wearing a hat in the video, and that the down the hill sentence spoken by the man was in fact a command and not simply a piece of a longer sentence that they picked out. So I think that's pretty... I think if the state trooper that is investigating the case is telling you the man's wearing a hat and the man is commanding the girls to go down the hill, we can believe that the man is wearing a hat and he commanded the girls to go down the hill, because Doug Carter has all the information that we don't have. So I think those things can be probably put to rest on the internet, but you know, they won't.
There is a lot of speculation regarding whether it's command or it's a part of a larger sentence, but I mean, it sounds like it's a command.
Yeah.
It just does.
Down the hill, yeah.
Down the hill.
Earlier this month, former prosecutor Robert Ives spoke about the case on HLN's podcast Down the Hill, the Delphi murders, saying that the crime scene was odd, and he described it as having a lot more physical evidence than a typical crime scene, in which a body is found with just a little evidence such as like shell casings or the murder weapon. He said the physical evidence is probably not what one would imagine or that people would think he's talking about, which is so interestingly odd way to put it. But I mean, we just don't know. He says it was just not your normal, a person was killed here crime scene. He said that the killer left 3 signatures at the scene, which are unique behaviors exhibited by the killer. Retired FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole, who worked on cases such as the Green River killer, says that these signatures go over and beyond what is necessary to complete the crime, and it is usually behavior that is satisfying to the offender, either sexually or psychologically. I think that I almost was led to feel, just based off of what the investigators on the case were saying. That because it's not what we would our minds initially go to, that perhaps the girls weren't sexually abused in this crime, and it was just a brutal murder is what I that's the feeling I got. I don't know what you felt based off of that. Also, just the time of it. I don't know you would even have time for that.
I mean, yeah, that's the only thing that I'm like, it was definitely opportunistic.
Yes, for sure.
It was with the window of opportunity that this person had, which was no window of opportunity.
Yeah, such a small one.
Like, it feels like he was planning the murder. But not that it was specific to these girls, but they just presented themselves at the most opportune time for him.
Yeah, I mean,
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I wrote that exact same thing. Like, and it's fun. It's just so funny. I was laughing as you're saying it, but yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Because people argue online again about whether it was premeditated or not. I think there were elements of it that were definitely premeditated, like dressing in baggy clothes and things to cover your face and putting your car in a place where you knew you were going to be able to go to it quickly and get away without it leaving from the parking lot of the trails. And then there were other elements that were like, probably, I'm going to go out today. If I happen to come across a couple people or somebody that I can murder on the trail and get away with it, I'm going to do it. If not, I'm going to just go home.
Right.
But the girls were not planning this outing, so I don't think that was a setup by somebody.
No,
you know?
no. It was...
They weren't lured there to be murdered.
It was all the pieces just falling into fucking...
Yeah, it's like any other situation where they just happen to just fall right in place where this awful, awful thing was able to happen. But what I gathered was that this was not simply gunshot. Like, it wasn't just as simple, I shot these girls. It was definitely, obviously, just based off of these people's descriptions, that we don't know anything about the details, that there was a brutal and unique element involved in the murders, and it was either to fulfill this sick fuck's fantasies, or perhaps to send a message to someone or somewhere. I'm not really sure. It just doesn't seem like it was just a matter of, I need to get my rocks off type of thing. But Ives did suggest the possibility that there were certain elements of the crime scene that could have been staged in an attempt to mislead the investigators, which definitely seems possible. As he says, there was a ton of evidence at the scene that should have led to one person or another, but it has never ever led to one particular person. So maybe whatever was left was definitely misleading. And, you know, if it's somebody who knows the ropes, like a police officer or something like that, then they know how to mislead investigators upon first initially coming to the crime scene. So it's very possible somebody is pulling a fast one on everybody here. And the Indiana State Police continue to refuse to release any information regarding the crime scene, saying that it could compromise the investigation. Although in a press conference early after the murders, it was stated that DNA evidence was being expedited, they also followed up by saying that they could not confirm that there was actually any DNA from the crime scene. Obviously, the lack of arrests suggests that they either don't have any DNA from the killer, or if they do, it doesn't match anything in their database to ID him. Their comments that the DNA isn't what you would, quote, expect, if it is there, means it's likely like touch DNA or something such as that. Trooper Carter said on the Down the Hill podcast that science would not solve the case, which isn't very promising about what they have.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a huge bit of information, in my opinion, about the case itself. I've said that dozens of search warrants and subpoenas were issued in the early stages of the investigation, but those were mostly to get locations and identities of cell phones, because those are the steps that are necessary to obtain any cell phone data. Fair. So they issued subpoenas for people who were just texting with the girls, you know, just stuff like that.
Yeah,
didn't necessarily mean anything as far as giving them any information about the case, because those were just their school friends and whatnot. He says he believes the killer, like you said, is someone local due to the trails not being a tourist spot, and an outsider would be unlikely to go visit there. And I would go a step further and say that in this case, they'd probably be unlikely to murder 2 teenage girls in such a small window of time and get away from the scene without getting caught, without knowing the area and the trails and all of that. It just doesn't seem very likely.
It does. It seems like a local spot where, like, locals know. Like, for instance, there's a spot right up the street from where I grew up, and everybody local knows this park, and everybody hikes it. There's haunted trails in this spot. But I mean, anybody coming into California wouldn't go to fucking West Covina, California to find this hiking trail. They'd go to the Griffith Trail. Somebody's not going to Delphi, Indiana as a tourist to do hiking, just like they're not going to fucking Cresco, Iowa to do fucking, you know what I mean? It literally is the same size town. It's a tiny, tiny town. There's 3,000 people there. It's not a tourist spot.
No. And the trails itself, definitely not.
Exactly.
In the debate over whether the crime was random or premeditated, in my opinion, it feels like an opportunistic crime, like we kind of already touched on. With the killer's clothing being baggy, they're wearing a scarf to cover their lower face, their hands were concealed, they had a baggy jacket on, but also, you know, what jacket isn't baggy? Perhaps they went out with a purpose that day. So the murders were somewhat premeditated, like we just talked about, but the victims themselves were random, as the girls made this trip to the trail very impromptu. to. And we've said multiple times throughout the ep, it wasn't like we're going to go and we told everybody about it online or anything like that. It was just simply, I'm bored. Let's go, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't think that they were lured there. There's, everyone's always going to speculate a million different possibilities, but I don't think that's what happened here. I think it was simply they just happened to step into the trail at the wrong hour, the exact wrong hour.
And like I said, I was thinking about this while I was doing research over the last few days, and I think this guy was definitely waiting for the perfect opportunity, and it presented itself, and these two young girls were just the unfortunate victims for him. It was going to be somebody, and it was unfortunately Abby and Libby.
Absolutely terrible. I read a few different, and I don't want to do too much Usually I'm all about speculating, honestly, but I don't want to do too much speculation because I've read a lot about how online and podcast speculation has really hurt the family, and that there's just stuff that's just simply people making situations up and running with it to the point where people start reciting it as fact and
coming up with conspiracies or whatever. Yeah.
But I had seen multiple people say that Abby was a hero because of something that they heard on the audio, like family members. And I don't know if it's just simply that they took this video or if there was maybe an element of one of the girls was actually hurt by this man first and the other one was trying to fight them off or trying to help, we just really don't know. Obviously, this was a heinous crime, perhaps more heinous than we even realized due to the lack of information that we have been provided. And it obviously has yet to be solved to this day. Considering that there are witnesses and there is audio and video captured, whatever other evidence exists that we don't even know about, this man is simply living on borrowed time.
Absolutely.
People like this love to talk about their crimes and likely... This is definitely on my part making this assumption, but a lot of them tend to have substance abuse issues because either they are having issues dealing with what they've done or because they have other issues that they're self-medicating for, or they have problems that devolve into them talking to people about what they've done. It just always seems to happen. Even if it's 10 to 12 years later, it's going to happen. And someone out there has been told such a tale. Maybe one late night after one too many drinks, they heard an offhanded remark that raised the hair on the back of their neck, or their friend says their aunt's boyfriend admitting to killing the girls, or whatever skeezy situation that the killer has found himself in and divulged a little too much information in a moment of self-aggrandizing and his guard being down. Something has been said, and if you heard what was said and you think there's something just slightly suspicious, do something, say something, and get this motherfucker punished for his crimes.
And you guys, 2020 has been the year of closure for long open cases, Jam Master Jay, Alyssa Turney. And if you know literally anything at all, there is an anonymous tip hotline that you can call or you can email another source. The tip hotline is 844-459-5786. And the email is abbyandlibbytip@cacoSHRF.com. More than 42,000 tips have been sent to the police. But if you know something that hasn't previously been divulged to the media, your tip really could be the one that catches this fucking son of a bitch.
So do it.
So do it. Yes. For real.
For real. Let's get some justice for Abby
and Libby.
And with that, we are going to end this terribly sad episode of the Delphi murders. And thank you for listening.
You're amazing. Thank you for, thank you for listening. Thanks for sitting with us. This was a really sad one.
Yeah.
God.
It is. But I just have to have hope that something is going to happen and eventually either through DNA or otherwise, just this idiot talking to someone, that something will happen with this case. So
it has to. I mean, there are so many narrow corridors that this asshole can go down. I mean, clearly he's a local. Clearly so many things.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, it's going to happen. I believe it. I do too. We can manifest this into existence here. Okay.
I actually do believe that he will be caught.
I do too. Let's real quick before we go, if you want to join our family and be able to have sweet ass Zoom sessions where we just hang out for an hour and a half together online and shoot the shit, or get free stuff every month. There's a lot of perks, extra episodes, whatever else we do.
Yeah.
You know.
We do lots
of things for our sweet, sweet family. Go over to patreon.com/creepitrealpod and join the family. And anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay. So have a great life.
Have a great everything.
Creep it real.